Commissioner Goronsky,
Here.
Commissioner Mejia,
Present.
Commissioner Perea,
Here.
Commissioner Said,
Here, thank you.
Vice Chair Carpenter,
Here.
Chair Vega.
Here.
Record shows we have 7 members present. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I will go ahead and lead us. If everybody can please stand. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so now we're going to move on to public comments. This is the time for the commission to receive comments from the public. We will not accept any additional requests for speaker cards once we begin the public comment session. If you have not already, please submit your requests. Madam Recording Secretary, do we have any public speakers or comments for this meeting?
At this moment, we do not have any speakers, and we received 1 e-comment, and that was distributed to the commissioners.
Thank you. We will now move on to the study session. Discussion of commission topics for 2025 meetings. Staff, how is this going to work?
Thank you, Commissioner Vega, Chair Vega. We wanted to open up the floor to hear from the commissioners to see what items they would like brought forward as future agenda items for this commission. I know that we have received some email requests of some potential ideas, but we really wanted to open it up to you.
Thank you. For the sake of transparency, because I know that people have been asking, can we please let the public know why the last 3 meetings were canceled?
I believe that topic is kind of beyond the scope of what we're looking here and what was placed on the agenda. So at this time, we're really just restricting this to the agenda item, opening this up so that we can get clarity on items that this commission would like to see brought forward. To the extent there may be a clarification or you would like some discussion, we'd be happy to schedule time to meet with commissioners individually to discuss those topics so that either sensitive or privileged information or other information that may be exempted, could be discussed in that forum.
Understood. Thank you. All right, so I will go ahead and open it up to the floor. Would any commissioners like to begin? Vice Chair?
Yes, I'd like to begin. And again, for the sake of transparency, I had sent in an email about having meetings regarding our bylaws so we can get established as a true committee. So that's something I'd like to see. So that's one of my suggestions. Thank you.
I can go next. I had also agreed with, I sent an email about the bylaws, also about, I would like us to have a discussion to look further to ensure that Santa Ana PD is in compliance with both city-level sanctuary ordinance as well as state policies such as SB 54. And I think that we should also have a discussion about setting up a protocol to establish how we will look at complaints as they come in. And I know we don't have a director as of now, but I think we can still establish that before we do.
Commissioner Mejia, if I could interrupt briefly, can you go back? What exactly did you reference with regard to sanctuary city laws? What was the context?
Compliance. So one of my understanding of our role is to also look at policies. And so part of those policies are to ensure that Santa Ana PD is following the policies and in compliance, and one of them is the sanctuary city. So that is part of the ordinance as well as both state legislative policies. So It's already, I'm not asking for new policy, that's already established, just ensuring that the PD is under compliance, that's all.
Great, thank you for the clarity.
Commissioner Said?
Thank you. I had a question. I don't know if now is a good time to ask it, but has the city council selected, I guess, an investigator to assist us in reviewing the complaints? Because I haven't heard anything.
So not at this time.
Oh, is that going on the agenda soon for city council? Do you know?
I'm not currently aware of that being on any closed session agenda item
Okay.
currently.
Okay, a follow-up question would be, without this person, we couldn't start reviewing complaints, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then, I'm not sure if now is the time, I did review the, comment that we got via email, and I just had a question to staff about the comments. I don't know if now is a good time, or I can save it for later.
Again, we're kind of restricted to the confines of the item that has been placed on the agenda. So I suppose to the extent that the speaker's comment elicits potentially an item, right, that you would like to see on the agenda such that we're falling within the scope of what was placed on the agenda, that would be proper. But I think just kind of an overall general question with regard to the speaker's comment may be better restricted for the commissioner's closing comments section.
Oh, okay, I can save it. That was it, thank you.
I do have another idea, if it's even permissible. Would it be permissible as an agenda item, or even for this committee, to discuss drafting a letter to the council in regards to the procuring of a manager so that we can proceed?
I think as far as that topic goes, I don't know that drafting a letter to the council with regard to the independent oversight director falls within the scope of the duties, right? The scope of the duties that this commission was established to undertake, right? So to the extent three of you, a non-quorum, wanted to get together and potentially draft a letter, I don't think anything would prohibit you from doing so. Obviously, if you reach the point of four of you getting together, there would be a Brown Act violation. But as far as agendizing the idea of talking about a letter that would motion or try to move the council in one particular direction or the other, I believe that falls outside the scope of the ordinance. And so I don't believe that that would be a permissible use of this body's time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Perea?
Thank you, Chair Vega.
First, I want to say, for transparency, I want to thank also the city manager Nunez and
Deputy, I forgot to put on, and Deputy City Manager Vasquez for taking the time to meet with me. I did have a very productive meeting with the City Manager's office yesterday to raise some of the concerns and also ideas. So just for clarification on the process, do we have to have an agreement of the majority in terms of the items that we are recommending to be discussed, or is it just more like an open, we make a list? Just want to make sure that I understand the process.
For that, we do want to hear your feedback on what items you'd like on the agenda, and then the city manager will take those into consideration for agendizing them into future meetings.
Okay, perfect. So we do not need a majority consensus on the items?
No.
Okay. So I definitely agree with Commissioner Mejia's comments or suggestion regarding the sanctuary ordinance. I would like to also see if the chief of police can join us at that meeting to give us a presentation regarding I think we'll require a presentation from the city attorney's office regarding the sanctuary ordinance, what it entails, what it means, and a presentation from the chief of police regarding how is it that the department is implementing the sanctuary ordinance in written administrative or policies and procedures. I think that, I believe that this department follows procedures suggested by Lexipol. Those are the policies that they follow. So we'd like to see what also is recommended by Lexipol in relation to the state sanctuary law and also how the department is interpreting that in relation to the local ordinance. So that's in addition to that. I'll also agree with discussing a process for establishing the complaints. Definitely agree with the bylaws that also establish officer elections in a period of time. And then we did receive the public comment from a resident regarding the use of military equipment policies. So definitely would love to see something like that in the future discussion as it relates to like the compliance with state laws, and also I believe the Santa Ana City Council passed its own policy 2 years ago. So we'd like to see the contrast as well of what the state mandates, what the City Council adopted, and for us to kind of also review. Those are my initial comments for now.
I have one more comment. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I also agree with the military equipment, and I do want to also highlight that I do think we should have an open discussion about how items are agendized. So aside from the bylaws are going to dictate how we move forward, but establishing how they are. And the reason for that is because if we're going to go with the majority vote, sometimes we know, right, in certain type of meetings, that majority vote might not be what also the public might want. And so I'm not saying that that is a case all the time with us, but I'm just saying that that actually prohibits us, right? That's one way that a lot of jurisdictions legally shut down certain opinions, and we are here to be an oversight committee, so I want to make sure to caution that and really be open and transparent with our public when setting agendas. Items and not being dictated by staff, especially not by the PD policy or staffers, given that this is an oversight committee. So just want to make sure that that is transparent.
Understood.
Commissioner Castillo-Lawton.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. So I agree with the other commissioners that I think it'd be helpful to have training on the bylaws that we set as a commission, and kind of related to that, how we actually agendize items. I think in doing that, it might be helpful to have kind of a presentation of how other commissions have gone through the process, or what their bylaws look like, how they go about setting agenda items and things like that, just so we have some examples that we can draw upon. I also agree that I think we should have training on the city's sanctuary city policies and how those interact with the police department, given that it's a very pressing issue at the moment. I think it would be good to have an understanding of how those work. And I also agree that I think it would be good to have training on how we review complaints and things of that nature. But taking a step back, I think it would be very helpful to get a refresher on the actual ordinance itself that established the Oversight Commission. It's been over a year since we had that training, and so I think having another meeting or a training to kind of go over those topics again, now that we've been meeting for over a year and a half. I don't know how long it's been. It's been over a year and a half, but I think that would be very helpful. And on the military equipment, I also agree with that. I know we received a complaint about the city's policies with regard to military equipment, and so to the extent that there's any training that we could receive on those policies, that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
So I agree with mostly what everybody has been saying. One thing that I want to look at is a policy surrounding driving practices. For example, can a police make a U-turn at a red light when his sirens are not on and there doesn't seem to be an emergency? I would like to know what the policy is surrounding that. I was looking at AB 1506. which is the California Department of Justice is required to investigate all incidents of an officer-involved shooting resulting in the death of an unarmed civilian in the state. If I'm not mistaken, I think it went into effect 2021. So I wanted to know, I don't know if we've had any, I know we just had one recently, but what I would like to know is what has been the result of investigations, if any, that the DOJ has investigated and what the results are. And if it would be possible to publish those results on the website. And I think that's it for now. Any other commissioners had
Yes.
Commissioner Perea?
Thank you. This is more a comment, but also suggestion, and Assistant City Attorney Martinez, please let me know if this is within our scope. And so I think that now we have been in the commission for roughly over a year now on our role, and through the trainings and the issues that we have been discussing, we have probably thought or identified areas that we would like to suggest to the Santa Ana City Council to look into, particularly when it comes to the duties and the roles of the commission. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility for us to have an open discussion regarding suggestions to the City Council around the commission, recommendations regarding the commission, both governance, ability to do certain things. I think one of the issues that I know now is that for example, agendizing any item from a commissioner's point is not on the ordinance, and so I think that things like those that could enable us to do or work better if have been written in the ordinance from the beginning. So I would like to have some type of process of conversation regarding how can we recommend the City Council to recommendations regarding the commission. And so it's a question, comment. Are we able to?
I have a interpretation of the ordinance again that I look to the four corners of this document, right? And I look to what is it that, again, is the scope and the duties of the commission. In my analysis, I do not believe it's within the commission's scope to recommend how its scope should be expanded or narrowed or moved in different directions. Individual commissioners or commissioners of less than a quorum, again, I think are well within their purview to make recommendations to their council members or to the city manager or to the mayor or to any of the elected officials regarding their thoughts of how the ordinance could be altered or how the scope could be changed. But again, for purposes of how this body meets officially and what it discusses, I do not believe that a discussion with regard to how the ordinance should be changed is within the permissible scope of how the body should operate. That has been my feeling on it. I would be happy to take that to some of my peers in the city attorney's office and get their thoughts on it as well, because I could be wrong. I've been wrong on things before. I could be wrong on this. So I will definitely roundtable that with my peers and my supervisors and see what their thoughts are. But again, those are my, I wouldn't even say my preliminary thoughts, because I have spent time thinking and pondering this issue and reviewing the ordinance and reviewing applicable authorities. And so that is where my analysis has landed.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification and also your thoughts on that. Definitely any other second opinion will be much appreciated. But yeah, I guess I'm just putting it into the universe regarding because we're supposed to look as a commission into policies. It is regarding the department, regarding how our police department those things, but it also intersects with how the commission functions. And so we do not have the ability to discuss how the commission functions. I think that is perhaps something that the authors of the ordinance missed. Would love to see that hopefully included. So put in the universe if commissioners end up deciding to talk into their own council members that I think we need to have some clarity around the things and potentially suggestions in our own individual capacity. But thank you.
Just to interject briefly, and I think to provide some clarity, because obviously the issue of the bylaws is the predominant issue that I'm hearing from pretty much every commissioner. Your ordinance is very unique because your ordinance, unlike all the other commissions where the city manager or some other designee or some department executive makes the decision as to how the bylaws are drafted, and they work with staff to put those together, and it's quick. I shouldn't say it's quick, but those templates are in place. For the most part, they're kind of plug and play. They exist. They're replicated. They're tweaked slightly. Your ordinance is unique, and the reason your ordinance is unique is because your ordinance sets forth and mandates that the independent oversight director is supposed to work with the city manager to create the policies and procedures, i.e. the bylaws. And so I believe that the reason it was drafted that way was so that the independent oversight director could take all of your input individually, every single thought, every single idea that you each have would then be filtered through the director to create a product that would make sense, that would flow, that would be legally binding, right? That would govern this commission, and that the director would work with the city manager. I understand the frustration that you're all having, but that's where the kind of the holdup is that the ordinance really restricts who is to draft the bylaws and how it's supposed to happen. And again, I believe that was drafted that way to protect and to incorporate all of your input so that nobody's forgotten about, and it's almost like it's as though it's like representative, right? That the director would represent and distill and boil down all of your thoughts into a finished product. And again, I know you're frustrated. I understand that, I do. But again, your ordinance is unique in that regard.
Thank you.
And if I could chime in also, when it comes to the bylaws, that is something that the commission, along with the independent oversight director and the city manager, do get to work on, as Jonathan was saying. And we do have some really strong templates already that we can model after. For example, we do have a planning commission. It's one of our strongest commissions for the city. So we could potentially start looking at that, using that as our base, and modifying it for the needs of this commission.
Thank you, and totally understand. I think no one faults any of you here. You're very restricted based on what you have to work with, and I think one of the gaps that we do have as well is what happens when we don't have an oversight director like right now, right? And hopefully in the future we don't have that issue, but it could happen. And so who steps in that role? I think so. Those are like still open questions because I believe that there's ways to strengthen the ordinance. I know that we cannot discuss it, but just for the rest of the commissioners to keep in mind, right, that there is. I think given that we have been here for a year, we have identified some pretty some gaps and some issues that I believe we can work to strengthen.
I just want to circle back to something that I said previously, which is that this is why I think it would be helpful to have counselor, if you could kind of group up with people within the city attorney's office and study the ordinance and come back and present your analysis to us. I think that would be very helpful. If our hands are tied in that we don't have an oversight director such that we can't really take action on anything, then I think a productive use of time would be to at least use the time that we do have when we meet to become experts on the ordinance that governs the commission. And in doing that, I think it would be helpful, like I said earlier, to compare our ordinance to the ordinance of some of the other commissions so we can see how our powers and our commission differs from some of the other commissions that already exist within the city. I think that'd be very helpful for me, at least.
I got a quick question and a follow-up on that. This might be kind of redundant, but assuming we finally do get a director, who's his second when he's not available? Or does everything just come to a halt because he's sick or out or vacation or what have you? Is there any structure for this to continue when he is not available? Because again, it seems like, we're hamstrung no matter what we do. We can't do anything now because we don't have a director, but if we have a director and he's not here, we can't do anything. So do you have any clarity on that?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Are you suggesting in a scenario where the director is like incapacitated or the director is on vacation?
Well, whatever scenario you want to pick. Let's say he decides to leave and we're without a director again. Again, we come to a screeching halt because we don't have a director, so we can't do anything, so we can't address any more cases. We can't do anything, as we're finding out right now. We're pretty much stuck. So it doesn't seem like there's a provision within the ordinance for a second in command. We have a chair, we have a vice chair. We don't have anybody to step in for the director. You have a chief, you have somebody that steps in for the chief when he's not available, but we're just dead in the water without a director. So that seems to be kind of a short-sighted way to go about business.
The problem is that if something is not in the ordinance, we don't really have the power to modify it. And so if we have issues with the way that the ordinance is structured, our only solution is to go to city council and ask that they amend the ordinance. Now that we've been meeting for a year and a half and we've kind of, experienced some of the pain points and we know what needs to be modified, we could make recommendations to city council, but we can't do it as a commission. We have to do it as individual commissioners or as a non-quorum group of commissioners.
No, I appreciate that, but that's what I'm saying. That seems like the ordinance is lacking in that respect. And again, we're hobbled because of that. That's my point. I totally agree with you.
I think the whole
But there's not a
problem with
workaround.
this is that it's the police oversight director that actually has the legal power to look into things and actually investigate things. And I think that's why we're so, we're dependent so much on the police oversight director because of that. Our entire goal, our entire purpose for being here is to investigate, but we can't do it without the person who has that authority to be able to investigate. I think that's what kind of makes all of this very complicated.
Well, it's not just the investigation. We can't do bylaws without him. We can't do pretty much anything without a director. And I'm just expressing my frustration.
But I
Because
think,
we're-
I was looking at the ordinance the other day, and it seems like there's still stuff that we can do. We could still look at section 2665, part A says that we can evaluate and make recommendations, review policies and make recommendations. Nowhere in there does it state that we need a police oversight director. And it says a few other things that we can do without that. And I think for now, in the absence of a police oversight director, we should look into that. And as Commissioner Mejia, I think you have mentioned this, that right now we should be looking at policies. We should look at, how we can strengthen them or get educated more on those particular topics. And I think it'll make us stronger as a commission when we end up getting a police oversight director and we actually start investigating some of these complaints.
Yeah, exactly. And just to add to that, just to clarify about my earlier comment, about the ordinance, the sanctuary ordinance, it's about compliance, right? The policy already exists. We can look at, we are within our right. And my understanding is that we don't need the oversight director. That is something we can identify. But to my previous comment before that about having a structure about what things are set in the agenda and being transparent, because I know myself, I've received several emails and messages from the public concerns about that. And I'm pretty sure everyone else here has also individually received. I think we do need to be transparent about how that is set. And I think, again, because we all have different expertise and perspectives, I do think we need to have a very structured, form way and transparent that allows different points of views to be set and not just majority. And I think that's why I was cautioning that we can't just allow, again, one person dictating everything or the majority, because there's different things that we should be addressing or that will be a different concern because certain individuals are receiving messages from the public at in different spaces.
Oh, there it is. Excuse me. I have got a question here. Okay, let's back up a minute and give me the absolute definition of a director and the absolute definition of what his or her responsibilities are. Because you get you're starting to confuse me. I know what a director is, I know what they should be doing, but some of you say that, who says he's going to do it? Who says they're not going to do it? What can he do? What he or she, what can he do? Who's responsible? Who's going to take over? So can you do that for me? Give me the absolute definition of what a director is and what are his responsibilities.
I could
To us.
it's all found in the ordinance. I would have to read the ordinance.
Okay,
So
where can I find the
I
ordinance?
would be happy to email the
Please.
ordinance to you, and
Please.
we can even schedule a time to meet.
Okay,
And
fine.
I would be more than happy to go over the kind of definition of the director and his or her roles and obligations and duties.
Okay, all right, thank you, I appreciate
Mhm.
that. Then that way, one of the questions down here was, are we going to listen to what this director says? Can we change, what he thinks he can do, or et cetera, et cetera? So I hope, that would solve the problem as what are we really talking about? What should we really be doing? Okay, that's my opinion. Okay, thank you.
I have another question. Thank you. I wonder if we can get someone from a different city that has an oversight commission, maybe locally or like in a different county, to come in, like the chair or the attorney for the other city, just to describe like what, once that director is in place, what it is that we would be able to do. Because I still think there's so much confusion, and from my understanding from other cities is the director comes and gets the evidence involved in like an OIS, officer-involved shooting, and then goes through the material, and then we're able to do the same, and then he or she is able to explain, their position on something, and then we come to a consensus. But maybe I'm mistaken, but maybe it would be helpful to have someone from a different oversight, police oversight commission come in and present to us. I don't know if that's allowed, but.
Thank you. Yeah,
So
well,
I will interject here. Yes, that's something that we could potentially look at. Also, going back to Commissioner Castillo-Lofton, that review of the ordinance, that's something that we can place on the agenda for future dates. So our city attorney, Assistant City Attorney Jonathan, can give us a presentation in depth on the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the whole conversation. But presentation will be appreciated to refresh our minds. But I think that it's been clear, right, that I think what the issue, the thing that threw us off as a commission is we started at a disadvantage with the timeline of the hiring of the oversight director. If we had an oversight director in place early on, we will be able to then go ahead and do bylaws and start other processes that we need to begin reviewing complaints. And of course, we can do policy. So I think that is the main issue that I have is I understand that we do need an oversight director for initiating the review of complaints. I understand we can do, begin looking into policies, discussions around department procedures without an oversight director. But I think the main issue still stands, which is what happens when we don't have an oversight director. And so, can the city manager's office step in that role while absent? And, other areas that I do believe strongly is that we need to have the city council needs to revise the ordinance to take into account some of these issues that we have encountered from agendizing items to also the way that we proceed with some conversations. So, I think a lot of us are a little bit just frustrated, a bit confused. But I do appreciate all the commissioners here for staying in the commission and continuing the work, which is important. Going back to which I appreciate that is the agenda item, the discussion today, which was providing city staff with ideas for topics. I think one item that will be very helpful for us at some point is to get some type of presentation, holistic presentation on data regarding police department that includes police response time by wards, the presentation around types of arrests that have been made by different categories, just things like, in general, that will allow us to have a better picture of department's performance and also work for us to start to look into potential recommendations. And I think some of the things that we're touching on regarding military equipment, sanctuary, stuff like that, I think we need to get some data as well. So just putting that out there, I can email the city manager's office with more specifics on the data. But I know that in previous commission meetings early on, many of us have requested data, and I think at the time we were still on the issue of the training. But I think I will recommend commissioners to send data ideas to be presented to the commission, because I think that ultimately the commission is to be driven by data.
I have a question. Are we allowed to review complaints together as a body in closed session without the police oversight director?
I have to go back to the ordinance, but I believe, I believe this was discussed at one point in time, and I believe under the ordinance that would not be permitted, that it is reserved for a review of complaints with the oversight director in closed session. I can give you an answer maybe in 5-10 minutes. I'll take a look at it, but I do remember we talked about this before, and I believe that it's restricted to the presence of the director.
My follow-up question is, I know that we cannot retroactively look at cases prior to the formation of this body, but let's say we get the director tomorrow. Can we look at things before that, since the creation of this body, but before the police oversight director was hired on?
Yes, the only aspect of the ordinance that creates a time bar is from the date that the alleged conduct occurred. So in other words, you could have a complaint submitted today, the director could be appointed in 2 months, and because, well, assume the complaint submitted today for conduct that occurred yesterday, okay? Director's appointed in 2 months, it would not be time barred because the conduct occurred 2 months prior. The time bar kicks in at 1 year. So if the alleged misconduct occurred 1 year before if the alleged misconduct occurred a year before, strike that, please. The way I'm describing this is not making sense. I apologize. There's 1 year from the date of the alleged misconduct that the oversight director would need to complete or begin his investigation. If it passes that 1 year mark, then the allegation and the complaint is time barred. But it does not matter when the director is hired. That's not the operative fact. That makes sense.
It does. So if somebody makes a complaint, essentially it's open for a year, and even if after a year the police oversight director still hasn't been hired, that complaint we can no longer look at that complaint anymore.
That's correct, except with the caveat that it's not a year from the date the complaint is filed, it's a year from the date of the alleged misconduct.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question on the, I don't know if the ordinance dictates that it's the city council that hires the oversight director, or is that up to the city manager, or is that policy of some other sort?
It's exclusively within the purview of city council. So previously, if you recall, this body reviewed, I believe, the 5 proposals and made recommendation as to 3. And so at that point, it would move to council to review those 3 and select one of them, none of them, 2 of them to interview. It's completely within the purview of council.
Can I ask is it a simple majority of the council to be able to hire the oversight director?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
I do, sorry. I just have a lot of opinions, as you all just already know. So I have a question about so speaking about the policies, my question is for Jonathan. are we allowed to have the discussion about, and actually formulate the structure in which we're going to be deciding and looking at complaints? Or do we need to wait for the oversight director? So it is my understanding, and I had talked to other folks, and I'm happy to share the research on this, but essentially a lot of police oversight commissions set like a matrix per se of determining how you, in other words, prioritize cases, because the assumption is that at some point we might have a lot, and how does that get prioritized? And my understanding is that most commissions have that, or at least we should have that in a way to kind of guide us. And I'm wondering if we need a director for that, or can we start working on that during public meetings so that it's all transparent?
I suppose a discussion could be had, yes, around the bylaws. The ordinance states again that the director and the city manager's office are supposed to work together to create the ordinance, or to create the policies and the procedures, the bylaws. But given the fact that I believe that it is assumed that, again, this body and its members would provide input to the director in the creation of those bylaws, I don't think it would hurt to have a conversation on some of the items that would go into those bylaws that these commissioners would appreciate were included or would be considered for inclusion. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the decision as to what makes it into the final bylaws would be between the city manager, the city manager's office, and the oversight director.
Just to respond to that, so the ordinance actually says that the commission shall, in consultation with the independent oversight director and the city manager, develop the rules for the transaction of the business of the commission. And so that contemplates that the commission is supposed to be involved and potentially even drive the process. And so textually, to me, that means we should be able to talk about it, as long as we at some point loop in the city manager and the oversight director into those discussions. But I don't see why that would prevent us from talking about potential bylaws for us that we then run by them. But it does say, you're right, that the city council adopts the rules. So the city council shall adopt the rules for the transaction of business. So anyway, I think if we're looking at the ordinance, I think we should theoretically be allowed to talk about potential bylaws.
I agree wholly, and if I misspoke, I apologize. So I believe what I was trying to convey was that there's nothing preventing this body from discussing it, putting its recommendations out there, so that the director and the city manager's office can work together to create a draft set that would make it to the city council for approval.
A follow-up question on that, because it seems like everything comes down to the city council, as we've seen when we elicited our person for the oversight director. So we, as a commission, get together, we make these bylaws. The director doesn't like pieces of it, the manager doesn't like pieces of it, so they have the authority to redline those without our consent? How much, I guess my real question is, how much authority do we actually have?
I believe, I'm happy to answer, I think, some of these questions. You know, we'll schedule a meeting, we'll talk about it. I really think at this point we're drifting a little bit from the scope of what's been agendized here. And that is, we wanted to come to the commission with ideas and thoughts generally on what we could place on an agenda so we could get into a more robust discussion. If what's agendized next is specifically, or agendized at some point in time, is the drafting and the creation of bylaws, then we can get into the nuts and bolts of that. But at this time, again, Vice Chair, I'd be happy to meet with you. We can meet in my office. We can have further conversation about it, but I do think we're getting kind of outside the scope of what's on the agenda.
I appreciate that, but I think everybody here would like to see the bylaws as a agenda item, correct? I mean, I'm not speaking just for myself, I don't believe, so.
I would request that we prioritize that.
And that is definitely something that we can place on a future agenda item for you to discuss specifically the bylaws that you would like to see for this body.
And just, again, there seems to be a lot of confusion with the ordinance, so I'm just going to say it one more time. I think step number one needs to be to have a training on the ordinance, but I would ask that before we have that, before we agendize that item, that we know when that discussion is going to take place so that we can all review the ordinance and have an informed discussion about what the ordinance says and doesn't say.
And we could definitely look to placing that on the next Oversight Commission, so the review of the ordinance. And other items that I'm hearing is bringing also the sanctuary ordinance in front of you to review it so that you see what is allowed in there, what's legal, and then potentially a presentation from our police department to see how they are aligning with that sanctuary ordinance. There's also another one of the items was the driving practices, is another one that I heard, and a presentation on SB 56, investigations from the department. So these are items that we can bring back to you in future agendas. So City Attorney's Office, Police Department can provide presentations so you see how the city operates with certain items. And then by that point, they're giving you an opportunity to review and potentially make recommendations.
Yeah, and there were other items there, so can you just maybe walk me through your thought process on how those items were prioritized, or will the other ones be prioritized as well?
We will be looking at all of those that were mentioned here today.
Okay.
The one that I did hear from was the one that I heard was the sanctuary ordinance, and I think that one would be one of the important ones to bring back. But again, priority would be another review of the understanding of the current ordinance that's in place.
Yes, and I want to highlight this because I want us to be very transparent about this. And my point here is not to highlight specifically the commissioner, but rather the practices that are being in place. So for example, earlier there was a mention about whether having a majority, right? And which I disagree because we should have other folks' opinions. But there was also an acknowledgement about the bill that Chair Vega had mentioned, which is fine, again, not an issue, about the drivers. And so my question is, I want transparency in the future, moving forward, about how these items are selected, and not just one member brings them up and that's sufficient, but other members who bring up something, suddenly the majority needs to be, agreed to have those conversations. And I want it to be fair equally. That was my point.
I have a question on that. The council, when they want to get something in the agenda, they bring it up and somebody seconds it. Is that all we need to do here? Can I say, I would like to have an agenda item to have a draft of another committee's bylaws so that we can look at that and then ask for a second and get it agendized? Is that what we need to do?
I think that we are not allowed to, because the way that the ordinance reads is that the ordinance doesn't even mention that we have the ability to agendize items as commissioners individually. So that's one of the gaps that I brought up around, talking to your city council member about the current ordinance. Because right now the way that it is I think this is the best way that the city staff can do it right now, which is do some type of open inquiry for us to provide feedback and suggestions, but not necessarily for us to have that direct ability to agendize items.
Which again is true, but if we hear, and you can go back and hear the conversation today, although that is true and that is a gap, and that will be used, right, as legal language, what is allowed and what is not allowed. However, there was prioritization, just one person bringing up one item. And this has been something that has happened in other meetings. And so the practices and policies are not being applied uniformly, and that is my point.
Well, if I can be so bold, if we can, as a suggestion, can we have bylaws from another committee to look at to kind of get the feel of what's involved? Is that legit?
Yes, and what we could do is, I mentioned the Planning Commission's bylaws, those are pretty strong, so I can send those off, or our team can send those off so that you can start reviewing some bylaws and starting to think about what you would like to see in your bylaws.
I just have another comment. I think we're beating a dead horse right now, but I'm going to continue to beat it. I feel like this commission got started way too early, and I'm not sure why perhaps it was so rushed, but there's 10 missing things, and it's just frustrating to us that we all have jobs, we all have families, and we're here trying to give back to the community, but it seems like 10 things were missing, and we're stuck and unable to assist everyone, like staff and the police department and the people, because it was sort of like rushed to get us here, and then, oh, we don't have X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. Anyway, thank you for listening.
I have one more item that I would like to have for discussion if folks would like to. I'm curious for the Sonata PD specifically about the policies on home searches. So for example, I would like how the decisions are made about intent home searches despite warrants being denied, and what is the evidence of proof needed for that? So if that could be something we could be presented on, that'd be great.
Okay, that topic is noted. Thank you, Commissioner.
So, and I'm sure Deputy City Manager Vasquez has all this information too, and we'll compare notes, but I'm gonna run through everything I've heard so far. And this is not in any particular order. This is not in order of importance. This is not in order of priority. It's simply the way that it was jotted down on my paper. If anybody hears anything that was missing, please let me know, and we'll add it to that list for consideration. So let me go ahead and start with policies on home searches, evidence of proof. Bylaws was very, very important, I think, to all of you. SB 54, sanctuary city laws, compliance with state law and city ordinance. Presentation on how SAPD will administer sanctuary city ordinance, policies and procedures. Process to establish bylaws. Use of military equipment, contracts, state law regarding same, city policy and procedures. Refresher on the ordinance itself. Policy on driving practices. AB 1506, result of investigations of DOJ investigations. Can we publish on website? Look at ordinance regarding independent oversight director. What happens when the director leaves? Can we pull independent oversight director from another city for update as to how they operate? Presentation from SAPD regarding data for arrest, response times, etc. That's what I have.
I just want to clarify, so for the refresher on the ordinance, I think it would also, I had mentioned, be beneficial to compare our ordinance to other commission's ordinances so that we can see how they differ, how our specific commission differs. And then I had also raised that I think it would be helpful for the bylaws discussion to maybe have a presentation about other commissions' bylaws to see how those, how they've implemented them.
Commissioners, any more comments?
One final comment. How will those items be prioritized?
So that'll be up to the discretion of the city manager's office, and what we're hearing, priority, what I'm hearing is bylaws, right? So review of the ordinance and bylaws, I think, are the most critical. Also, sanctuary ordinance is one of the big ones that's on the table right now. So I think looking into the future agenda items, those would be the top 3 priorities as of now. But happy to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I have a thought here, back this up. First of all, if you're gonna do this and this and this and this and this, okay. I think it would be better to find out first, what are the bylaws with the other, commissions that we have here, the other planning commissions, or even other cities, if we want to invite somebody in, that's a nice idea, I thought. Before we start going to this, A, B, C, and D, let's start with A right away. What's the first thing you want to know? You want to know what the rest of them are doing. Then we'll come up with ideas. It would be better that way for us to get ideas of what we really want or how we want to put it forth. So that's my thoughts on that. Okay, in other words, don't just jump into the middle, throw stuff out like this. Let's start at the beginning and wade in. Okay, thank you.
Are we able to get an email of the existing bylaws of other commissions? That way we can start looking into it ourselves
Yes,
and be prepared when we have that discussion here.
yes.
Pardon me, you mean send them to us, or you mean wait till we come to a meeting to get them?
No, and send it through email. That way
Okay,
we can
first,
start
yeah,
looking
okay.
at it now.
Okay, all right.
But I agree with your priority that you said earlier, so.
One clarifying question regarding the timing of agenda, when the city staff agendizes agenda. Is there a specific rule that it has to be agendized 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours in advance? I know the city council meetings agendize items, they put the agenda forward like a week in advance?
A week in advance.
Okay, is that similar for the commission?
The commission is different. The commission adheres strictly to the Brown Act requirement, which is 72 hours. City council, by way of ordinance, I think it may have even been the Sunshine Ordinance, extended that to an entire week. So the Brown Act sets the floor, which is 72 hours, which is used for this commission. Council's different because it was extended to create a higher level of transparency and preparedness.
Okay, so the Brown does set the floor. Would it be possible for agenda to be published a week in advance for this commission? Who would that be, the city council that makes a decision? Or
I think that to the extent again, when an oversight director is appointed and is working with the city manager's office, to the extent it's possible to create the agenda in advance of 72 hours, I don't see any reason that would prohibit it from being agendized or being put out before that timeline. But sometimes these things are put on last minute, and there's last minute changes and decisions made. So I can't be in a position to hog tie the city into saying it'll be put out 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever. I think the city would at least default to the Brown Act requirement of 72 hours with the intent to put it out sooner if possible.
thank you.
All right, I think we're all good. That was a good study session. All right, we're gonna move on to comments, starting with staff comments.
I just want to let you know I am happy to be a part of this commission. I will be serving as a designee for the city manager moving forward. I look forward to bringing items to you on the agenda and reviewing some of your priorities.
Thank you.
I have no comments.
Okay, so
I've
now
done
we
enough talking
will,
tonight.
we'll move on to commissioner closing comments. Would anybody like to start? Commissioner Said.
Thank you. Just on the comment that we got via email, for AB 481, I think the city is required, so I was just wondering if we could know where it's located. The city's supposed to have like an overview, like Orange County Sheriff's Department has this, where it's an overview of how many times the police department per year has used military equipment, like a drone or a 40-millimeter launcher, whatever it is. Do we have one? I assume we do. A report?
You're asking if we have a drone?
No, not a drone. I would assume that the report regarding usage of military equipment pursuant to AB 481.
Yes, we do.
Where is that?
I believe it's online, but I will get back to you. We'll get back to the commission, and it's something that we can provide at a later meeting.
Okay, perfect. Because I think this would help the individual and his or her concerns. Thank you. That's the only comment I have. It's nice to be back. I missed you guys. Happy Valentine's Day.
All right, Vice Chair, you look like you're ready.
Yeah, a lot of great comments. I agree with everything that's out there. One thing personally, I think that as individuals, we need to solicit our council people to select a director, because obviously that is really a stumbling block for this committee. So I would urge everybody to do that. And I look forward to actually getting some policies and other things reviewed, and thank everybody for being here.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Castillo-Lattin?
Yeah, I want to start by saying that it's really nice to be back. It's been 3 months, so it's really good to see everybody again, all my fellow commissioners. I just want to thank everybody today for a productive conversation. I know we're still, clearly going through a lot of growing pains as a new commission, but I think we're working, we're moving in the right direction, and everybody is, working together and seems to want to, kind of get to, reach the end goal as quickly as possible. So that's always good to see, and I'm excited to watch the commission continue to develop.
Thank you. Commissioner Goronsky?
Well, first of all, let me say, I think you can tell by the group up here, who's grandma. It's interesting to listen to all of you and your different ideas, and I must commend each and every one of you. You are very good at presenting your position to all of us like that. I admire you, really, all of you. I would like to see us have from another city come in, and who's very well versed on their program, to present it to us just for curiosity, and maybe give us some ideas even before we start getting into the other bylaws of the other commissions. It would just be interesting, I think, and I think that might be a real good place to start right there. But anyway, I commend all of you. You're very good speakers. You've got good ideas. Not all agreeable. Many, just like us human beings, you believe a little bit, you agree a little bit, and you don't. But we all seem to come together with the same answers and the same problems and the same way of maybe a little bit different at getting things done differently, but at least we're all on the same track. And for a very good reason, too. It's for our city and mainly for our police department, so you don't get in too much trouble. Okay, thank you. And happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Commissioner Perea?
Good to see everyone, and let's get to work this year.
Commissioner Mejia?
Yeah, I just want to say welcome, Sylvia, and also I'm looking forward to getting work done. I think today was really productive, and I look forward to working on some of the policies with everyone.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want to echo what everybody has said. It feels good to be back, and I absolutely hear and feel the passion of this commission. I think the public is very interested in this commission and what we do, and I think we're all here are really ready to put in a lot of work and really serve our community. And I think the diversity and thought in this commission is what's going to really make this commission successful. And so for that, I'm thankful. I do want to say happy Valentine's Day to my kids at home who are probably watching right now. My two oldest have taken a liking to city council meetings and stuff, and so they're probably watching right now. But glad to be back. But with no further comments, the next Police Oversight Commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 13th in the City Council chambers at 5 p.m. I hereby adjourn the meeting. The time is 6:09 p.m.
Recording stopped.